Good evening, excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Cambodia Global Dialogue. Tonight we are having a sort of replay of last year, in the sense that we're going to be discussing a theme with the CDRI on a flagship program, a flagship event called Cambodia Economic Outlook, which is a flagship event that we do every year in conjunction with ANZ Royal Bank. And I have with me again my good friend Larry Strange, the Executive Director of CDRI. Larry, welcome again.
Good evening, nice to be here.
Isn't it this is the third time you come to
It's the third time. Very happy to be back.
All right, well, you have to know that you'll be invited at least once a year because of the Outlook conference, right? But Larry, give us just refresh the memory a bit to our audience who may have missed all these months since we had the last dialogue. What is all about?
Well, it originated back in 2006. At that time, we had a board of directors meeting for CDRI. It was then chaired by His Excellency Dr. Hang Chuan Naron.
Okay.
And we felt that it was really important that CDRI had a major public event that created a forum to, in a neutral, safe space, to frankly discuss challenges and solutions for Cambodia's development. We shaped this idea. We then took the idea to ANZ Royal and its then CEO, Mr. Dean Cleland. We were very pleased. They were immediately enthusiastic and they agreed to become our partner. The first Cambodia Outlook Conference was held in 2007. We had 6 since then. Number 7 is coming up on the 20th of February. And I'm pleased to say that each of Mr. Dean Cleland's successors, Mr. Stephen Higgins, Mr. Grant Nucky, as CEOs of ANZ Royal, have extended the very productive sponsorship partnership. So we see it as a very important partnership between an independent development policy research institute and a leading private sector financial institution that of course has a vested interest in the success of Cambodia's development.
And the event has all been crowned by the President of Samdech Kadachu Prime Minister Hun Sen.
Well, yes, we've always been very honoured that the Prime Minister has made this a priority in his busy program. Each year he has, we have set the date in consultation with the Prime Minister's office, and each year he has given the keynote opening address. And we have been very pleased that these speeches are a very frank and balanced assessment of the government's achievements and the challenges that are still to be faced.
Well, I mean, it just happened that I'm also with CDRI. And last year we had a great conference in a year where we were chairing the ASEAN. I believe that the output of the conference from the debate have given some good input for the government, for the Prime Minister, for him to use in many different international settings like the G20, several ASEAN summit there. I see on the table that you have this conference documentation there.
Yes, well look, we are very keen to ensure it is not just a talk fest. We like to ensure there's a very rich discussion, very animated Q&A with the high-level speakers. Just to clarify, it involves about 250 to 300 invited leaders from government, the private sector, the research community, non-government organisations and the development partners. So in a sense, everyone who's anyone is there. It's a very rich discussion, and at the end we put together a set of Cambodia Outlook briefs. We published them in English and Khmer language. They were of course provided to the Prime Minister's office, but we also distributed them widely before the ASEAN summit. And they were on issues of how to ensure sustainable growth in a changing global economy for Cambodia, what Cambodia could gain from closer regional economic integration through GMS, ASEAN, East Asia, a range of issues like that. And because they were in English and Khmer, they were very accessible to people. So
last year it served a great purpose because it gave the intellectual contribution to Cambodia as a chair, to understand a bit the dynamics, the implication of regional integration, regional connection, regional connectivity, if I can just use the ASEAN word, the connectivity. But at the same time, it does give us a introspect look into the country development agenda as well, right? I mean, so what do you think this year, since we have no more the glamorous ASEAN summit anymore, what is the theme of this year that you think can contribute the country?
Well, in fact, as you are well aware, there are many issues arising from last year that are still not completely resolved. The movement towards ASEAN Economic Community 2015, for which Cambodia is better prepared than many of the other ASEAN countries, but still there are major challenges in terms of hard and soft infrastructure, some of the reform of regulations and the capacity building of officials to make sure there is smooth cross-border transactions in the movement of goods and people. Many of these issues are still challenging for the government and its partners and require more work. But what we've, after consultation with the private sector in particular, because they have a major stake in this conference, we've come up with the topic securing Cambodia's future, food, energy and natural resources. The reason for that is that we feel Cambodia is at a particularly critical stage of its development. It has made much progress. It has had a remarkable pattern of high levels of growth despite the severe impact of the global financial crisis and the regional economic downturn. Cambodia has bounced back. We see growth of possibly 7% this year. We see, if the government and World Bank figures that I've seen most recently, they suggest that poverty reduction has now been more successful and is down to between 20 and 25%, depending on how you look at this statistically. So much has been achieved. But we now look at the next step forward for Cambodia, moving from a least developed country to a lower middle income country.
Emerging economy.
And there are some critical issues that will enable that to happen. That's why we have chosen this subject for this year.
All right. And so from this sort of like analytical thing, what do you expect that, what sort of advice, what do you foresee the outcome of it, you know, that the Cambodian government could use in the future?
I think, if I could just run through what I think will be some of the critical issues that will be discussed, that are very much in the front of the government's mind, in the private sector's mind and development partners' minds. Firstly is how to continue to grow the economy at a high level and reduce inequality and build inclusiveness. There are still too many poor people. The benefits of the economy still flow unevenly. And this is an issue about both industry policy and about ensuring the flow of government policy implementation to the rural poor. That's the first issue. The second issue is about agricultural development and food security. As I'm sure you are aware, this was a major issue the Prime Minister of Cambodia raised at the G20 in Los Cabos, put the issue of food security on the agenda. This is not just an issue for Cambodia, this is an issue for our region and an issue globally. And with the impact of climate change and the importance of the adaptation of the economy to climate change, we need to look really carefully at ensuring agricultural development not only meets our export needs, but also meets the sustainable food security needs of Cambodia's own people. So this is a big set of issues, because under the agricultural development challenge we have the challenges of increasing productivity, providing access to affordable credit to the rural poor,
financial inclusion,
educational inclusion, making sure that young rural Cambodians have access to vocational education and training that equips them to farm better. The quality control and access to fertilizers and pesticides. The issue of logistics and transport, of getting crops to market in an affordable and expeditious way. So there's a very big set of agricultural development and food security issues.
Larry, you mentioned technical education, that sort of thing. So this year theme will be more on food, energy, agriculture, that sort of thing. But don't you think at some point we have to start thinking a bit more on industrialization, you know, science and technology, innovation, that sort of thing, where you think there'll be some lesson learned? Is that a parallel approach, or have to be a linear approach? How do you see that?
Well, I think there's a general consensus that Cambodia does need to continue to focus on agricultural development. It underpins the strength of the economy, and it certainly is critical to further poverty reduction and rural development. But as you rightly say, it must run in parallel with industrialization.
Yes.
And we see some promising signs of increased investment in light industry, from Japan in particular. We see improvements in an investment in rice milling, which is linked to agricultural development. We see the establishment of auto assembly plants. We see some light electronics manufacturing occurring. All of this is the other side of the story that will help drive growth and create employment. But the issue you raise is a very important one. There is still a very significant gap between the needs of the labour market, the needs of employers and investors, and what our education system is delivering, particularly on the issue of vocational education and training. Because what we really need are people who are good engineers, technicians, project managers. We need more of those, and I'd say a few less of people with qualifications in business and finance and communications. This is very important.
But Larry, perhaps this could be, well, I'm just projecting in the future that probably next year's term should be more focused on science, technology, innovation, taking Cambodia to the next step. I think this could be something to bring us much closer to the ASEAN economic community. One single production base, that sort of thing. But back to our conference, over this year, I still believe that there are a whole cross-cutting element of science, technology, energy efficiency, renewable energy, which are all science, by the way. On that. You see there's a connectivity.
I agree with that, and I think your point about science and technology and innovation, it's very much linked to the other part of the program, which is about energy and infrastructure. Cambodia has made enormous progress in physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, some hydropower development, the restoration of the railways, for example. But there's still much to be done, not only in the quality of infrastructure and the affordability of the use of infrastructure and logistics, but also what's called soft infrastructure, building the capacity of government officials to administer logistics and cross-border transactions in an open, clean and efficient way, like one-stop shopping, if you like.
Indeed.
This is part of the ASEAN Economic Community agenda.
Trade facilitation.
Trade facilitation, that's right. And it's linked to the whole issue of energy. Cambodia again has made progress on energy. The government has a strong commitment to getting power into rural Cambodia over the next 5 years. There are some hot issues here. The issue of importing electricity at a high cost. How do we reduce reliance on important electricity? How do we generate electricity that uses clean technologies? How do we ensure sustainable, environmentally sound? How do we ensure, if we're going to invest in hydropower, how do we make sure it doesn't have a negative environmental impact? And how do we make sure it genuinely impacts positively on the livelihood and well-being of rural communities? These are very challenging questions.
The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has appointed the now current Director General of UNIDO, Dr. Jung Keller, to head a UN initiative called Energy for All by 2030. And already there are I don't know how many hundreds of private sector companies who are pledging billions of dollars because they believe that, without energy, there's no life, per se. But again, this is one UN initiative. But at the field level, how do you see this tension between, on one side, the need to increase agriculture productivity for food, for consumption, and land cannot be recreated, right? So, but at the same time, there's more mouths who need to be fed every day.
Look, this is a very challenging set of issues, and it's a very hot issue.
It is a hot issue
in Cambodia.
Yes.
The whole issue of land management and land policy, and it will be dealt with very openly in the Cambodia Outlook Conference. I'm sure in the Prime Minister's speech, but also in the sessions that follow.
Yes.
We have a very challenging set of circumstances. I think everyone would agree there have been great difficulties in the administration of land management.
Yes, yes.
It's been a hot issue, it's controversial. There have been many allegations of the inappropriate eviction of local communities. The Prime Minister has now put a program in place of expediting delivering land titling. This is very important.
Yes, yes.
But the most critical issue is that policy and implementation strikes a better balance between the provision of economic land concessions for major agro development and the awarding of social land concessions and ensuring local communities retain ownership of their own land to build the productivity of small holdings.
Yes, indeed.
This is a very difficult balance to strike.
So you hope that there be some good debate on that issue at the economic conference, and I'm pretty sure we will look for a cue from like Prime Minister to set the stage a bit where he see the vision of Cambodia in the context of this sort of reform. So this is quite good. More on the organization itself, right? Do you see a link between what you're doing, what CDRI, particularly this Economic Outlook Conference, any link with the other initiative that of institution or royal government like the Supreme National Economic Council, for example? Because they are also working on policy like the Vision 2030, they're working on Rectangular Strategy 3, 5-year plan, all things, you know. Where do we fit on that?
This is an important question. As you know, CDRI is independent, but we have a strong commitment to being a useful resource for the government, for the parliament, for the private sector, and for the government's development partners and non-government organisations. It's hard to meet the needs of all of these different stakeholders. But what we try to do with the Outlook Conference is the Outlook briefs are widely disseminated. We always involve someone from the Supreme National Economic Council. CDRI is also in partnership with SNEC on a range of other policy research projects. We involve the private sector and development partners as much as we can, and we make sure that the conference is also the vehicle to distribute a whole set of policy research CDRI has generated through the previous year. We see this as part of our social responsibility to disseminate as widely as we can. But as you mentioned in your question, the most important thing for us is to be effective in disseminating the policy relevant research directly to government initiatives that can take it on, listen and learn from it, and hopefully use some of the recommendations in policy making.
Well, let's backtrack a bit, to CDI itself. You've been with CDI for quite a while already.
9 years.
9 years, all right. So you can never say you don't know enough about Cambodia.
A little.
A little. What do you see up to now, the contribution of CDI? Of course, you did mention quite a bit already, the synergy with the government institution. But, if you look back, what would be the pride that you have seen in the last 9 years in terms of CDI playing a contributory role to the development of this country?
I would say three things. I was very unfortunate to inherit a legacy from an extraordinary woman who was our founding director, Madam Eva Mislevic. I inherited a very healthy, important organisation.
Yeah, big shoes to fill.
That's right, very big shoes. And I hope we have taken that legacy forward in building CDRI. We have doubled in size, tripled in budget, even though fundraising is still very challenging, as you know. The range of our research programs has broadened. We now have 5 programs. We only had sort of 2.5, I think, when I arrived. Across economy, trade and regional cooperation, natural resources and the environment, public sector reform and governance, social development, and of course poverty, agriculture and rural development. So we've deepened and broadened the scope of the research and the depth of the research. The second important achievement is, I think, we've deepened and broadened CDRI's relationships. Not just within Cambodia, as I said before, all the major players, partnerships with government, private sector, other research institutions, the development community and NGOs, but also regionally. My own background is in regional affairs,
yes.
And we've put a lot of work into building relationships with other institutions in ASEAN,
yes.
China, Korea, Japan, the ADB Institute, and others. So we have more of a regional context that we once had. That would be the second thing, relationships.
Yes.
And number three, in my view, is probably the most important.
Yes.
And that is a contribution to building the knowledge and skills of young Cambodians. At any one time, we have about 5 bright young researchers in PhD programs somewhere in the world. We have many graduates over the past 9 years from PhD, masters and bachelor's programs. We have rolling programs of capacity building, and increasingly we do those programs in partnership with other institutions like SNEC, Royal University of Phnom Penh, Royal University of Agriculture, Cambodia Economic Association, and others. So I think that capacity building of the knowledge, skills, qualifications of younger and mid-career Cambodians to replace people like me. So we will not be necessary anymore.
Like us.
Like us, perhaps.
Well, Larry, I think, you know, you have left a good imprint in the development spectrum of Cambodia, and what is so important is that you and I, sharing the same vision. You know, you're the executive director. I'm honored to be chairman of the board for this term, and we're working together to fulfill one thing, which is, you know, how to make a strong Cambodia that can, I would say, not, you know, sustain, but how to withstand, because global change are so fast, so dramatic, so unpredictable. And if our country, if our economy, if our knowledge base, right, and here I stress the human soft side, our knowledge base is not resilient enough, you know, it'd be very difficult to keep Cambodia on the edge of development. And this is probably something that you should be proud, we should be proud, that we are leading this I would say, thought process. The Cambodia Economic Outlook Conference is probably one of the flagship that we should sustain after you leave, after I leave, that this is something that we have to continue. And I hope by then, you know, the young offshoot, bamboo offshoot that we have built will continue to carry our flag. So we're running out of time. What's your last word, Larry?
Well, I think my last word is education.
Yes.
I think there is nothing more important for Cambodia at the moment than building a stronger, higher quality education system, particularly tertiary education, but specifically vocational education and training linked to the sector's needs that are fundamental to Cambodia's economic future.
And then linked to this Economic Outlook Conference for the year?
We'll link to that also, yeah.
So you feel good? So we look forward for that, right? So once again, Larry, thank you so much, and I'll see you at the conference.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we are coming to the end of the show, but we have a good glimpse, a bit on the past on this event, the Economic Outlook Conference for the last 6 years. We're moving to a 7th year, you know, in a few days. The theme is quite timely. We're talking about, you know, fuel, food, energy linked to agriculture development, that sort of thing. So this is a time where Cambodia is going through I would say, an agricultural, intense agricultural growth here. Rice is exporting, you know, we're doing very well on that. You see investment into the sector, you know. So the timing is good. But at the same time, you know, I hope that the intellectual debate from the conference will also look at some element of that can sort of like grab a bit the challenge that the world's facing now, which is climate change, right? And climate change will throw a big curveball to many program, activity, planning in many countries around the world, and Cambodia is not, so I would say, immune to that, right? So we need a good debate, we need a good sort of like reflection on what we can do, what the country can do, what the country should do, and what do we have to do to make sure that we are resilient to all this global and climatic development there. So on that note, I hope to have a good briefing for you after we have the conference. So Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good night.
Good night.